Hello, and welcome to
Wow,
another
it
episode of.
notifies you.
You ruined my intro, damn it! You're the only person who's ever done that.
Go ahead. The Zoom notifies you. It's like, hey, this is being recorded. That's the first time I've ever heard that before, bro.
I'm not even going to edit that out. I'm just going to leave it in to make you look bad.
Do it, absolutely, brother. All right, I can make myself look bad. I'm pretty good at that.
Nah, nah. Fuck's sake. Welcome to the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is a fellow voice actor and voiceover artist, Mr. Johnathan Crane. This has been in the works for some time. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, brother. After I ruined your intro over here, it's good to hear the official intro now. I'm doing all right, brother. How you feeling? I know we set this up like a while ago,
Ooh, long
and
time.
you reached out to me. I know we've been kind of back and forth for a little bit, and when you finally reached out to me, like, hey, do you want to step foot on the show? I was like, you know what? Sure, why not? Let's have a sit down and chat for a second.
You know what's interesting about this actually is so for those who obviously, well, none of you guys will know this. Me and Jonathan, yeah, connected some time ago, probably through Reddit. That's where most magical things happen. And yeah, we just got chatting, didn't we? And then we did a video call, and obviously I learned a little bit about you as well. And then I sort of followed what you were doing online, and kind of seemed like a no-brainer to me. Like, yeah, I should invite him on the show. It'd be a good conversation. It's always kind of nice to interview or have a discussion with like a fellow actor, because it's like, for anyone that's not aware, like this is the career I'm pursuing, and I don't know, I just find it interesting to see like how other people are going about that, and like where, I suppose, because everyone has like a different story as far as like how they got into this, how they were introduced to this, etc. So I guess what I'd like to start with is like, what was your introduction to voice acting? Like, where did it begin for you?
What was interesting, right? It's like most kids. You sit here and you're watching like your Saturday morning cartoons, and you're hearing, you know, uh, Sonic or in my case, Goku or everybody else, and you're hearing the voices of like Jolly White, Sean Schemmel, Chris Abbott, and you're hearing all these voices, but they're coming from the characters, right? And you're like, hey, that's awesome. That's the voice of this person. That's the voice of that person. And then when you start like looking into things, you're like, oh, there's an actual actor behind it. You start growing up and realizing the characters aren't real; they're just cartoons. And you're
What do you
like,
mean?
hey, I want. Like, what do you
What?
mean? Like, and then you start learning about these people, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it became something different where I wanted to sit here and now do exactly what it is that they do, which is like you hear some of these like long drawn out speeches and stuff like that, and it impacts so many people in so many different ways. And when you sit down and really start thinking about it, you're like, that's acting. Like that's what that is. That's hitting the core and soul of it. That's what I want to do. I was like, let's sit here and change somebody's world or perspective, even if it's just one person. I was like, that's kind of how I want to go about it. But then people ask you, well, why don't you just be a regular actor? And I'm like, I'm not that pretty, right? I'm not that
Okay,
pretty.
well,
And we got the voice. Everyone's always says, oh, you have a voice, and it's a good voice. So it's like, all right, like most kids, you start off with like a little bullshit US meme. But can I? Am I allowed to curse? Like,
yeah,
I'm
swear like
sorry.
a fish if you want, man. Yeah, go for it. Never
All
understood that
right, because
expression,
you
swear
start
like a
off like
fish. Fish swear? What?
I've heard drink like a fish before. But yeah. But yeah, so you start off with a little bullshit US me bike, and you just start graduating from there. Hopefully you start graduating from there. You look into like upgrading equipment, taking classes, and all this other stuff.
Also, a couple of things there. You said, "Oh, I'm not good looking enough to do that." That's bullshit. Very handsome man. Secondly, and this is what someone said to me years ago, and I think this is very true. It's not about being good looking; it's about having a distinctive look, or a look that can be molded.
Yeah.
One of the two. So, to take someone from, okay, this is not from the acting sphere, but you know who Kate Moss is, the model, right?
Yes.
A lot of people have theorized that the reason why she's so successful in that particular endeavor is because if you look at like all of the different modeling photos of her over the years, like it's lots of different looks. Like she can be molded like clay almost, and kind of, I suppose from an acting perspective, that's like really, really useful. You know, if you've got an actor that can do that, like a Johnny Depp, for example. But then other people obviously have like a particular look that maybe lends well for, let's say, villain characters, or maybe a particularly heroic look, so they get more, you know, heroic characters. But like the point is, it's a distinctive look. So don't discount yourself, brother. I mean, a lot of the videos I've seen you do when you get really intense and you get into it, or some of those promo shots you do, I'm like, this guy's got something.
you really have to. And you know, like that's the other thing. Somebody had brought it up to me one time. They're like, and like you see in the comment sections, like some of my videos, bro, what's with the face? Or you really get into character. I'm like, well, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like that's what acting is. You have to get into character. You know, if your character is angry, be angry. If your character is sad, be sad. You know, that's the one thing that always stuck out in my mind. Somebody sat here and like told me, if you're going to act, don't pretend to act. Actually act. You know, it's when you're doing voiceover work, and that's the biggest misconception with a lot of things. Oh, well, you're a voice actor, you're not a real actor. That's not true. That's really not that true. You have to get into your emotions, you have to get into your feelings, you have to be able to be vulnerable to the world and show the world exactly what it is that you have while acting, but at the same time be able to disconnect that when you're not doing a scene, or you're not, you know, actually performing, whatever it may be.
So this is something I'd love to kind of explore with you, this theme of comparing actors to voice actors, and how, you know, there is kind of various misconceptions, and there are, I would say, stigmas attached to it, in a sense that, you know, when you see a regular actor, they obviously get the kind of applause and respect they deserve, but like a lot of voice actors don't. And a lot of voice actors, particularly some of the best, voice, oh my God, hundreds of characters, like some of your favorite characters. And to be honest, look, you know, I could say as a fellow voice actor, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I know you've been doing it a lot longer than me, but I approach it the same way I do like regular acting, where you have to put a lot of research in, as far as, let's say, like if it's an accent, you have to kind of spend a long time mastering that. Like I've been spending a long time mastering American accents, and I'd say it's only really in the last year or so that I've actually made some real significant progress, where it's actually at a point that I think is usable and doesn't sound like a guy trying to do an accent. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a tip point where it's like, okay, now this is actually,
and what's so interesting about accents is, and like I had a conversation about this with somebody else, is, okay, yeah, you can do an accent, that's cool and that's fine, but you also have to remember there's also regional accents to where you're actually going from. And it's the same thing here in the United States, you know. So like I currently live in New York, so I can sit here and, you know, do like the whole Brooklyn accent if I really wanted to, which is what typically a lot of people think when you sit here and say, oh, you know, put on the little New York accent, but even then that's a little bit too thick. But it's the same way if you go down to the South, they sit here and sound a little bit more relaxed, a little more slow down, like, all right, like we're going to sit here and do this, you know? And it depends on exactly where you are and where your point's from. But it's not even so much about doing an accent. It's now, can you act in that accent? Can you make it believable?
Right.
That's the other point. So yeah, you know, like my grandmother's from Ireland, right? So it's, you know, I can sit here and do, you know, a little bit of the old Irish brogue, and that's, you know, nice and fun and dandy. But the problem is, can I sit here and put on a convincing voice or a convincing act for it, right? And even then, there's going to be one of your Irish listeners going to be like, bro, that was terrible. Don't ever do that again.
Well, but there's a thing. There's an interesting thing, because it's like there's the Irish American accent, which is kind of like an amalgamation of the two. Best example I can think of is if anyone's ever played, well, most of us played GTA 4. There's a few characters in that that are of Irish descent, or they've like emigrated from Ireland, and they've got that kind of nice kind of, I don't know, like a pastiche, like a mixture of both, and it's interesting. Because that you find that a lot. You spend enough time in the country, and you will begin to adopt elements of that. Or like it happened to me when I moved to Europe. Like my English accent was changing a little bit because I was spending so much time speaking another language that when I would speak English, obviously I would tend to speak slower, because if I spoke at the normal sort of rate that I would in English, it would be like a little bit too much. You kind of have to dial it back a little bit. It's interesting. I don't know, but
it's funny because like with me, I'm very susceptible. So I'll sit down and I'll talk to somebody, and the longer I speak to somebody, the more I pick up on their cadences, how they say particular words. So then it's when I'll sit here and be like, okay, cool, this is how this person speaks. And in order to, I guess, cross that lingua franca, the language bridge, all right, you start, connecting with somebody else on a whole different level. When you're able to speak their version or their way of language. There is a better way of saying it, I guess.
Right now we're seeing a lot of major actors take on quite prominent voice acting roles. I think the best example of this in most recent years would probably be Bradley Cooper taking on, I can't for the life of me think of the name of the role, but in Guardians of the Galaxy, the raccoon character.
Rocket Raccoon.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's got the best gig ever. One of the biggest movies and the biggest franchises, and he's in the booth the whole time. Lucky git. But anyway, I reckon that roles like that are kind of, let's say, showcasing voice acting in a much bigger way. But I guess my question to you, which I really want to explore with you, is why do you think that voice actors don't get the same level of respect that regular actors get? What is it that makes people think like, oh, this is in no way comparable, or it's not acting as you kind of outlined earlier? What's the difference?
I can only guess. And it's moreover, maybe you're not in front of the camera the entire time, and that you're lending your voice to for essentially an inanimate object or inanimate character, and a figment of somebody else's imagination is really what it comes out to be. But you're not on screen. You're not, performing the stunts or doing all this other stuff that a normal traditional actor would. So you don't have that physical connection with the person that has that voice. So like, for instance, Bradley Cooper, he's been in a lot of amazing movies, The Hangover, Limitless, and it just goes on and on and on with him. But now when you're sitting here saying, oh, well, Bradley Cooper plays Rocket Raccoon, you're hearing a voice from a character. But the only reason you know it's Bradley Cooper is because, A, his name's in the credits. And you're like, oh, I like how that guy sits here and sounds, where he's like, oh, yeah. That's Bradley Cooper. That's amazing. That's awesome. But you would never know if he was never on screen. You would never know who this guy was until you did a little bit of a Google search.
That's an interesting point. I never really thought about it like that. You're right. I guess maybe there's like a sense of like relatability, maybe more so if you can see a character on the screen and you can like, it's kind of like that. I suppose maybe not relatability, connection. There's you as the audience viewer member. You have more of a connection.
You're not seeing that person. Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's the actual connection to the person.
Interesting. That's such a great answer.
That's just my. No, I think just my thought process, anyways.
No, you're on the money, because it's so true. Like every time I've looked up like when I found out Mark Hamill played the Joker years ago, I was like, oh wow, like I mean I know it's well known now, but like back in the day I didn't know that, and I was like, oh, that's mad. The guy who played Luke Skywalker also plays Joker. What?
Yeah, well, and what's funny about that, right? Is like you look, because again, that's the same thing I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
You look him up and you're like, oh, cool. Luke Skywalker plays the Joker in the Batman, and you're like, hold on a second, that's not Luke Skywalker. That's Mark Hamill. You're
right.
like, you start making these connections with previous characters they've already done, and that's the
Mm.
craziest thing in the world.
It's crazy as well because I think controversial, but I think his performance as the Joker was better than his performance as Luke Skywalker. Even though Luke Skywalker is an iconic character, I just feel like he really defined the Joker role. I don't know. It's just something about that
What
role, like the way he did it was particularly special. Maybe it's just because I don't know. I'm a mark for like voice acting. I love it. I think it's amazing as an art form.
it's funny because like certain people, and that's what's so magical about voice acting, right?
Mm,
Is that you sit here and you take something from someone's imagination that's never had a voice in its entire time before, or it's only a voice that you hear when you're reading the comic or the book, whatever it may be, and here comes an amazing voice actor, and he adds that extra layer of depth to something that you never thought of before. And that's what's so special. They're able to sit here and actually bring to life a character you've only read about or thought about or imagined about. That's what's amazing about it. And that's what makes, good voice actors separate from, the great ones, or your regular voice actors from good voice actors. It's that extra level of understanding the character and actually making it real. That's what's so special about it.
dude.
And that's like how any actor does anything,
Hmm.
but you're not doing it with your body. You're just literally doing it with your voice.
I couldn't agree more. This is why I always make sure to talk about how they are different. I consider them completely different things. I know it's acting, they're both acting, but it is, you approach it so differently. Like my process for on-screen acting versus voice acting is totally different. I could wager, I wouldn't even, I couldn't even really say that like voice acting is easier because it's not. It's just, it requires different things from you.
Well, it really does, because it's like, okay, cool. How do you sit here and portray that you're angry at somebody without an actual visual representation of being angry? Well, most people's thoughts process of, oh, well, let's just get angry. Well, what do people do when they get angry, right? They raise their voice, they sit here and start screaming and all this other stuff. Let's draw that back a little bit, right? And let's pull back the curtains. Anger has many different levels, right?
Mm.
Are you angry because you're embarrassed? Are you angry because you're sad? Are you angry because you're so furious that you actually start crying? So now, are you crying and you're sad, or are you crying because you're angry? There's different levels that you can't show from a voice actor that you have to be able to try and portray.
There's a book I was reading recently, which is by Michael Caine. It's called a Film in Acting, or Acting in Film. And it's basically taken from when he did a bunch of lectures at the BBC in like the 80s, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, point is they were taken and put into a book, and the book has a lot of good lessons, I would say, for actors. And when he's talking about his performance in Educating Rita, he had to portray a drunk, right? Like a tragic drunk. And he commented on this, which I found this really interesting. I just wanted to share in this conversation now, is this idea that like a lot of the time when you're told like, okay, be angry, play someone who's drunk. Like a lot of people flail, they're all over the place, aren't they? They're just like throwing their arms up and stuff. And sure, people can be like that when they're drunk. But actually, a lot
Right.
of the time, when you're drunk, you're trying to hide it. You're trying to, like, oh no, I'm fine. Like I'm not actually drunk. Like, and do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's more like subtlety in it. And if you play it like that,
Well,
it's more convincing.
of of course, because most people, and it's just like you sat here and said most people think like I'm not drunk. You're the one who's drunk. Okay,
Right,
don't
right,
sit here
right.
and tell me that I'm drunk, right? But that's not true. You have your fully functioning alcoholics that can actually
Sure.
do an entire thing, or you have the guy who's sitting there who's like drinking in the corner, and he's just like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good, bro. Yeah, no, I'm
Mm.
good. Not everybody talks with like that slur and slowed down speech and like, hey, buddy, what's going on, man? It's everybody has a different way of doing things.
I think what you
It's
said
breaking down
though,
the preconceived notions.
that plus what you said before about identifying what the source of the emotion is. Does it come from sorry, does it come from,
Yes.
is the anger coming from a place of injustice or annoyance? Or because yeah, you've got like various different levels, haven't you? Like, and also you can be a little bit drunk,
And
or you can be really drunk, or you could, you know, there's levels to this.
and that's the entire thing. Like, well, why are you drunk? Are you drunk because you're at a party? Are you drunk because you're at a pub or a bar? Or are you drunk because you're at home and you're sitting here drinking the entire time because you're trying to forget something that happened?
Right,
There's
yeah.
levels of being drunk. There's levels of emotions. There's levels of acting, and that's what a lot of people don't get or understand, or can't really hit that nail on the head. There's different levels to different things.
I think it might have also been Michael Caine or one of his contemporaries that said something like acting is more about reaction rather than, you know, acting. Like I think a lot of people when they think of acting, they think, okay, I've got to pretend to do this thing. And it's like, it's true, but actually acting is more real than you think. You're drawing on, and again, this depends on your school of thought, whether it's Adler or Stanislavski or whatever your method is. At the end of the day, you're
Mm-hmm.
drawing from a place of realness. You're drawing from something, and the differences
and
between
and
those. Yeah, go on.
and that's the key. Is it's the ability to be vulnerable
Right.
with people and yourself. It's being comfortable with showing people or the world or whoever your audience is, uh, you, for essentially all purposes, being you, or being this character, being emotional, and have all this stuff going on. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's kind of the best way to explain it.
We'll get into some of the stuff about your life outside of acting, but I just want to kind of focus on this one element because I find this interesting. Like
Sure.
with some of the stuff in your life, like you're a man who's seen some shit, been through some shit. Let's put it that way.
I,
And
I've I've
right.
done a lot, yeah.
And I wonder when it comes to acting, do you draw upon those experiences directly? Do you put yourself in a similar feeling? Like, what's your process for acting? Like, because I imagine it's a dangerous road. If you're drawing on, for example, places of trauma, experiences, moments, memories, that can be dangerous because you can lose yourself in that.
You actually really can, and that's the moment where you're crossing that bridge or that barrier where it's like, okay, cool. Are you stepping into something that's like really traumatic for you, or are you just hitting, like, you have to ride that fine line of being able to call upon it but stop at the same time. So like I've been through a lot in life. Yeah, I'm a military member, where I was a military member, and I've been overseas and I've done a lot of things, and yeah, you see a lot of different stuff is the best way to explain it. And sometimes, yeah, you do draw upon the memories, and that's when you're like, all right, cool, let's take a moment back, and let's pump the brakes, stop the record, and let's just chill for a second. Like, all right, cool, I'm getting too much into there. Other times, I honestly just let it ride. And doing this sometimes, like somebody once in one of the videos, like, it's very cathartic, just letting out all that rage and anger or
Mm,
screams or whatever it may be, right? It is very cathartic because you're essentially performing therapy on yourself without realizing it, by doing it through a character,
yeah,
right? And it's kind of interesting sometimes. It's a very kind of dangerous line to kind of ride, but if you can do it, you can do it, and if you can't, you can't. But I think that's the part where it separates a lot of people. Like, can you stop that at a moment's notice? That's what I'm saying. Like, even now,
absolutely.
it's like the one thing a lot of people can't do is like cry on demand. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm,
it's like, all right, cool. I have to get into that point where I can, but then
yeah.
it's easier for me to do it. It's not so easy for for others, and it's like, okay, well, where's that coming from?
on that, I've done it a few times, but yeah, I'm the same as you. I have to get myself in that headspace. But something, again, useful tip that I learned recently, same as what we were saying before about the you know, dialing it down. Like, if you're an actor and you're trying to make yourself cry, keep telling yourself, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah.
Reverse psychology, because that's exactly what you do a lot of the time when you were going to cry. You try hold it back, don't you? Don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people let it out, as you should, but generally speaking, you probably want to keep it in, because crying doesn't tend to happen at like a convenient time, does it? It happens whatever, like
No.
something horrible has happened and you're like, oh, or maybe something beautiful has happened and you're just trying to keep it in. The point is, you generally
The
speaking are trying to keep it in. So
the it reminds me, like, my son just graduated fifth grade, right? And it just
congratulations.
reminded me of something. Well, thank you. You know, he's a good boy. He's doing everything he can. There was a woman there, like a mom, and she was like doing one of these things. She's like, you know, face. She's like, and I'm like, hey, I get it. She's not she's crying, or she's about to cry, but it's not because she's angry. It's because she's so elated. She's so happy that her child is graduating.
Yeah.
Right? Her child is going, and she's about to just break down in tears. And I'm like, you got to understand that, where's that coming from? She's just so elated, so happy, so filled with pride and joy that her child is graduating. And you have to kind of like get, that's not all crying is because you're sad. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to understand, where is this coming from? That's the best way to do it. Or at least in my opinion, anyways. You know, what do I know?
No, I agree. I think a lot of about acting is understanding emotions on a deeper level, and understanding and what they mean. And that's why I asked you the question before about knowing how to dial it
Yeah.
back, where the line is, because it's tough, you know, sometimes. Like I was reading today,
Yeah.
Tom Holland, who obviously famous for Spider-Man, recently took on a role. I don't know what the role is, but it's some sort of series where he's got like long hair. And in a recent interview, Zendaya, who's his partner, was basically saying that he was like hell to deal with for a year. And instantly I was like, okay, so it's method acting, I suppose. Like he was maybe like that. But it made me think about, you know, method acting in general and what it means for those around us. And there's different levels. I mean, you hear about someone like Gary Oldman who can just switch it on and off, and it's like during scene. And then there's other people who live in the character, say like a la Heath Ledger
Yeah.
Joker, where they just live in it for like 2 weeks and everyone around them's like, oh, fuck this person. Like fuck's sake.
Yeah, really, right? I think the most famous method actor is Daniel Day-Lewis,
Right.
because
Amazing.
he will spend years researching a character,
Wow.
getting it. So like when he did Abe Lincoln, right?
Mm-hmm.
He managed to find the only actual surviving voice recording of Abe Lincoln, and he
Wow.
modeled his voice after that. So it's like, you have all these people and their ways of doing things, but you know, you have your Shia LaBeouf, you have your Christian Bales, Daniel Day-Lewis, you know, Heath Ledger, where they get full blown into character. Like even Christian Bale with The Machinist, right?
Mm.
He got so bone rail thing. I think he ate like an apple and drank a cup of coffee a day or something like
Dropped
that,
down to 50
and it just
kg.
shrank him down. Oh, it was terrible, and he looked like absolutely. He looked like a walking skeleton.
Yeah.
But that's how he does his acting, and some people agree with it, some people don't, depending on who you are and, you know, where your headspace is for certain things.
I gotta say,
It's the
I'm of
craziest
the
thing.
that's the direction I'm headed in, because I really, I know it's bad. I'm just being real with you. Like the way I see acting is it's at its best when it's as believable as possible. Like there's stuff that I see on
Well,
screen sometimes and I'm just like, I don't believe you. I don't believe what you're trying to tell me. I don't believe that
yeah,
you're suffering or you're in this. And I feel like those actors that go that extra step and take those risks and really try to just put themselves into it as much as possible, that's why they get the accolades. That's why they get the applause, because they really went for it. And I feel like it's a great thing for life as well. If you want to get the best out of life in whatever you do in life, throw yourself fully in it, be the best that you can be, and you get what you put in.
You know what is so funny about that is like even with voice acting, I knew nothing about voice acting at all, not a single damn thing. And I went, I have a habit of going down a rabbit hole. Whenever I want to sit here and find something, I have to find everything about this thing. So I went down this whole year-long rabbit hole about, equipment and then acting classes. And a lot of people don't get. I went, dude, it was a whole thing. I took Shakespeare. Like, I've never took Shakespeare in my entire life before, right? But now I'm like taking Shakespeare monologue classes and then improv classes and then acting classes, and I'm just like there's a whole art form to all of this, and I just went down a whole rabbit hole for an entire year, fully submerging myself in this thing, and then it's like, all right, cool. Now what am I gonna do with it? And I
That's
just started,
sensible.
you know what?
Yeah.
I just went off and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do videos. And I started doing the voiceovers for the videos that I do now. And it kind of just took off all on its own. And people started, calling me and writing to me like, hey, this is this and that's that. That was amazing how you did that. And I'm just like, I just wanted to do it for fun. It's impacting certain people in certain ways, and it just got totally out of control. I'm like, all right, cool, but I'm having a blast with it.
That's the reality as well. It's always at its best when it's enjoyed by the creator. Like when I look at, like, say, my podcast or the Patreon content I do, the Twitch streams, even the acting I get to do from time to time, I enjoy it more than I ever did in the past, I think, because my mindset is I want this to be the best that it can be, because I don't get to do this for a living. I don't get to do this all the time. So when I do it, I'm not going to sit and be like, oh, I wish this got somewhere. I'll have those feelings, don't get me wrong, but I'll focus on making it the best that it can be, because I love it. I love this. I live for this. If I got to go and do that day job, fuck it, I'll do it. But like, while I'm here, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to make this the best thing it can be and put my heart and soul into it. And I think with acting, like I said before, it's that's when you get those best performances, because I think those people are more students of the craft. Like I look at someone like Joaquin Phoenix and I'm just like, there's a guy who's trying to recapture classic cinema in an age where it really feels like it's dying in many senses. And don't get me wrong, there are really ambitious filmmakers still out there. There's people trying to do amazing things still, but there's a lot of just
yes.
That's the thing. A lot of the industry is just how many people have you got following you? What brand? You know what I'm saying? Like what? It's a marketing machine and it's a business. But at the same time, there are still those people like Nolan still films in the classic way, which I think I agree with that. I think that's a better way to do it than everything digital. But again, it's preference.
You know what's so like amazing about that? Like when you brought up Joaquin Phoenix and doing acting in the classic style, right?
Yeah.
Take it the most recent movie that comes to mind is The Joker, where it was Todd Phillips that directed it, and it wasn't like this superhero movie. It wasn't like explosions and things like that are all happening. This is, if you really break it down, it's a character study of what a mental patient looks like according to him, and his style and his way of doing things. And that was such a real subversive way. Like, is this really happening in his head, or is this happening in reality? And being able to sit here and like you're asking yourself that question as the watcher or the viewer of this cinema, of this art form, and it's just like, that's acting, man. Like, that was so amazing to watch, and it's so hard to sit here and like be able to really get into that headway or headspace and make it so believable. Like, is he really acting or is he just being himself? Like Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man, right? He's another one. is he being himself, or is it
Absolutely.
Robert Downey Jr. playing Robert Downey Jr.? You know what I'm saying?
He
Like,
he
is
was
he just
born
being
for that
himself?
role. Even Stan Lee said it himself.
He's
He is
like,
Iron
he
Man. I
is
believe it.
absolutely amazing.
No one, I don't think
That's
anyone
exactly what
else
it
could play it
is.
like quite like RDJ. I just can't see it.
No, he's amazing. He's been through his own ups and downs, right?
Yeah,
And it's I kind of feel like, the best actors are the ones that have, gone through like these
suffered.
traumatic events.
Well, I mean,
You know,
if you look
it's
at it real, like if you look at your life as it exists in this moment, you'll realize of the things that you've been through, whether or not you've had it tricky, whether or not you've had it difficult. To be honest, I started being better at the creative endeavors in my life when I actually like lived a little. I used to suck like 10 years ago when I tried to like write a song and it was like that. Like, yeah, sure, I'd felt some things, but I'd not really suffered. And then years later, I did suffer. And then I'm like, all right, now I got some shit to
y-
write about. I got some real
yeah. Well,
problems.
now you've lived a little. You can get into that headspace.
Right, yeah. Well, it's real, isn't it? It
um.
becomes real. It's no more are you
Oh,
pretending. And that's where acting's at its best. And I know we're just
who was it was I think it was Henry Cavill, who, like, his parents are like, hey, you've done a few things already, that's cool and that's fine and dandy, but you haven't booked anything for years and years and years. And I think it was like, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, he had told his parents like, hey, if I don't get like this next gig, I'm just gonna go back to a normal 9 to 5. And of course the phone call that he wound up sending directly to voicemail, because he's playing World of Warcraft, was Zack Snyder for saying, hey, you want to be Superman, right? So
imagine
it,
getting it.
it's
Oh, do you know what I heard about
craziest
that?
things. You
Did you hear the story about that? Where apparently, like, he missed the call for Superman because he was too busy playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
What a legend!
exactly, right.
He was too busy gaming with the
Like an
boys. I love
absolute legend,
it.
bro.
But like, yeah, I'll call
Man's
Snyder back
nuts.
later, man. He can wait. I'm too busy raiding.
Like, I don't know who this is. I'll call you back later, bro. I'm
Oh,
busy.
do you know stories like that though? Like inspire me. Like I've told this story before, but the guy from The Office, that played what's his name, who was with Pam. Krasinski. The guy I'm on about, who was
Oh, John
in
Krasinski.
John Krasinski. Yeah.
Ye-
So the story goes
yeah.
apparently that he'd moved up to New York. He was, typical story, waiting tables for months and months and months. He got the he promised his mum maybe that he'd be there for like 2 years or something, and if he didn't find anything, I'm coming home. That's it. It's done. And it's like the final months, it's not worked out. And he calls his mum and he says,
Yeah.
hey, listen, it's not happening. Gonna head home. See you soon. Right. And she's like, well, hang on. Just stay another month. And it's the classic, well, you do what your mum tells you. So you're just like, all right, I'll stay another month. Fine. And then that is when he got The Office. And even when they filmed
it's
the first season, he was still waiting tables, and then boom, his life changed forever. So
and that's the craziest thing in the world, is you're chasing after this dream.
yeah,
And I guess the moment you stop chasing is when I guess it comes to you. I don't
that's what
know,
they
man.
say, isn't
It's
it?
so weird.
Everyone says that to me about like acting and love and you name it, and I'm like, but like if I don't try, surely it won't happen at all. I can't just like sit and pray that like, oh, I hope
Yeah,
that a
exactly.
Hollywood script just gets delivered on my door. I got to put
I
some
hope
work
I
in.
get noticed one day, doing absolutely nothing, right?
Yeah, you hear these stories as well, like classically, like, oh, they just found him on the street or found her on the street, picked her out of a crowd, and she became a successful actress. And you're like, that shit doesn't happen. You know what? You know where that shit
I
happens?
knew at
In the
that moment that
movies.
was the person I needed.
It happens in the movies. You know why? Because it's not real. It's
Because
fiction.
it's not real. It doesn't happen, bro. All right. You have to try.
Fuck's
You got to
sake.
sit here and go out there and make mistakes. It's the best I can tell you,
Oh my god.
But yeah, it's absolutely crazy just going down this whole roller coaster of things because like you know with social media started initially as like you know getting to know people, you know, crossing, you know, hey, I get to know you, you get to know me, and you follow your friends and you follow people you may like, and then somehow like this changed into a whole marketing machine. I think you hit the nail on the head
Yeah.
earlier. How many viewers do you get? How many followers do you have? And you know, are you able to sit here and now you're your own company essentially?
Yeah.
You're your own. You are the product, right? So you now have to sell yourself and getting yourself out there, and it's so crazy because I had to sit here and learn that aspect of it as much as anything else too, because it's a marketing machine, and I even took marketing classes on how to sit here and do that. And I'm just like, yeah, but you have to find that fine line. Like, okay, cool. Are you being you? Am I being Jonathan? Or am I being Johnathan Crane, the voice actor, the guy who screams into a microphone? You know, like you got to ride that line a little bit again, you know? Do you want to, who are you portraying to be or who are you pretending to be? I don't, is the best way I can sit here and say it. Because, like, on the internet, you can be anybody. That's the issue. You can literally be anybody. Anybody can be who you can be, whoever you want to be. Reinvent yourself. People do it all the time. You know, new Master 69. You know what I'm saying? You can, you know, or you know, J.K. Rowling Simmons the third, or whatever it may be. It's you could be anybody, but can you be yourself? That's the craziest thing in the world. You can no longer just be you anymore.
Oh,
It's
what a
so
question right
nuts.
there. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
here's another thing. If in
it's
a world
nuts.
where you can be anyone, would you want to be you? There's a
Yeah, really,
question.
right? If you could be anybody, why would you be you? I guess that is another way of
I
saying
wouldn't
it,
choose you. No, I'm
right?
just kidding. No, no, you're right. You're on the money. You're on the money. It's one of those things where it's like I think you have to figure out what that looks like. Like one of the things I decided on when I started doing this was I chose to be authentic. I chose because the reason why is I didn't want to play a character, ironically. I didn't want to like put on a persona that I'd have to keep up, and then I don't know if I ever got fans, for example, I wouldn't want to have to like put on this persona 24/7. So I was like, oh, it's easier if I just be me, and then if I'm not at 100%, then it's just me in a bad mood. It's not me not being this character, you know.
What's the thing about like so with like even the stuff that I put out, right? I do favor one particular platform over the other. So like I have a TikTok and I have an Instagram. I favor Instagram just a little bit more because I get to, you know, show people the behind the scenes looks at certain things, you know. For me going to the gym or me editing or whatever it may be. That you just can't achieve on a platform like TikTok. And I like that little, you know, interaction sometimes of just behind the scenes, you getting to see me for who I am instead of just, you know, me doing a voiceover for something. You get to see me hanging out sometime. Like I'll post pictures of like my kids every once in a while, but it'll be like in a story, and like it goes away like 24 hours or whatever it may be, you know, because you don't know who's on the internet half the
mm-hmm.
time. But yeah, I like that little behind the, you know, curtain peek. You know, who's Jonathan? Well, he goes to the gym every day. He sits there and edits his stuff. He sits down. He wakes up. You like, you know what I'm saying? Hangs out. It's being able to show just enough of you, but not enough of you. It's weird to sit here and like put in the words, I guess.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah, it's I say this said this recently in a stream that you sometimes have to be careful with like the parasocial relationships thing and just make sure that you establish like I'm here to entertain, to perform. You get, as you say, like a sneak peek every once in a while, but that's it. Like you draw the line.
Yeah,
It's and
I recently what I think annoyed me. I put up a thing for oh in June. It's Gay Pride Month in June
mhm.
for America, for the states, right? And I have a lot of people in the community. I know a lot of friends in the community. I
Hmm.
have so much fun with them, and I put up my support for it. And I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
it's Gay Pride Month, the whole nine yards. And somebody messaged me privately. I'm not gonna say who this person is. They're like, hey, yo, that's not cool, man. I'm like, are you gay? I didn't even bother answering that question because
Yeah.
I'm just like, how close-minded could you be to something like that? Like, I put up my support. It doesn't matter if I am or am I not. I put up my support for something, and you're like, oh, well, I may have lost potentially a fan because I support something. I don't give a fuck, bro. Like, dude, I'll see you the fuck later. That's I didn't even bother answering that question. I just left it in like my request mailbox or some
Yeah.
nonsense like that.
And I think that's the
And I'm
best
like, dude,
response, you know?
it's like, dude, I don't know, man. It's just so weird. I forgot what I was going on about.
No,
Right?
I get what you
Oh,
mean.
like
It's
showing.
you got to show your support for things and stand your ground. And yeah, sometimes people aren't going to like that. Sometimes people aren't going to support that. Like case in point, I've posted some stuff about like men's mental health before, and I know there's a lot of dudes that are like, "That's weak." Guy talks about his feelings, da 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 da, weak, and I'm like, well, listen, I think it's better that a man talk about his feelings and is still here, alive on this planet, than
You
not doing it.
you know
And
what is you know what's That's so interesting that you sit here and say that because coming from being in the military itself, right?
right,
There's a lot of keep that emotion and keep that kind of shit to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody wants to hear all that stuff. And even now, I still kind of do it every once in a while. But no, like, dude, as far as men's mental health, you have to let it out because you're inundated in an entire society where men have to be strong and this and this. Well, I guess times are changing now. You don't have to be so strong anymore.
no, do you
But
know? I think the difference is not that like you don't have to be strong anymore. I think the difference is that because think about it, generate the war generation, for argument's sake, right? Those men
mm,
desperately needed to be able to sit down and be able to talk about these things, but whatever society culture wouldn't allow for it. But they needed that. They needed to like come to terms with everything because it's not a thing
the
that human beings should have to go through, you know?
when I first came home, there's a phone call. I don't. I'm not going to say the name of the program, but there's a phone call that you have to make when you first come home from like active war zones and stuff. And they're like, it's a bunch of questions. Your name, your social. Do you have nightmares? Do you
Oh,
drink a lot? Do you want to hurt yourself? Are you angry? Whatever it may be. And you have all these questions you have to answer and answer truthfully. Well, hopefully you answer truthfully, or you're not
mm,
just trying to rush this person off the phone. And it's like, all right, cool, yeah, yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine. No, I don't drink, I don't get angry. It's not my deal. And then when you have to do that phone call like 3 or 4 or 5 times, you're like, all right, cool, like yeah, now I'm getting angry, like having to answer the same questions over and over and over again. But it's like here's an opportunity to help yourself get through something.
mm,
And me being the typical guy at the time was yeah, no, I don't need help, I'm good, I don't need to talk about my feelings. Nobody
right.
wants to hear about my feelings, nobody wants to hear this, nobody wants to hear that. And now I'm in a art form where you have to show your feelings, which is very weird, right?
Yeah, the iron is not
Yeah,
lost on me though.
it's yeah, exactly. It's very different, man. It's very, very different. It's be able to sit here and show, I guess, your feelings. Just talk if you have to talk. Don't be afraid to talk. Even now, I hit up some of my friends and I'm like, hey, you don't need to call me just to sit here and like because you need something or you want something. You
Yeah.
need a call just to sit here and chat. Hey, don't worry about it. Chill out.
I just think it's important for dudes to be able to do this. I don't think it makes you weak at all. I think that I don't know. There's this. It's just somehow different. And I will say this. I do understand for a lot of guys as well. Like society tells you one thing, but then what you receive is something very different. Um,
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's almost that weird thing of like, yeah, you can come out and talk about your feelings, but it's just going to be used against you. And like my personal opinion is, I don't give a fuck. Like I don't feel like any less of a man by talking about my feelings because, again, as I mentioned earlier, I've had friends who've taken their lives and stuff, and I feel like if they'd have been able to talk more and be more open, I feel like they'd probably still be here, you know. And that's the way I look at it. You know, I look at it more from that
You
perspective
know
of, you know,
you would hope so, at least. You know, if at least they had an ear to talk to, or an ear to
right.
listen in reality, you know.
Yeah, and
And
I get every guy is different. Like I understand that. Like, you know, like I understand about myself. Like I'm more of a sensitive guy. I've always been like that. But like maybe not every man is like that. I understand. But you can still like chat with your mates, crack a beer, and be like, "Hey, you good? Nah, I don't know. All right, let's just shoot the shit." And then, but no, but like you know, being able to just shoot the shit with your buddies, just as an example. Like I feel like it's, you know, it's a good thing. Even if like nothing comes of it, as far as like it doesn't solve the problem or whatever. It's like I don't like that's how I understood the concept of empathy, right? Was that it was not about
Mhm.
trying to solve the problem. It was just about like being able to relate to someone and be like, hey, yeah, I understand how that feels. I get it. Like you're
And,
not alone in that.
like, that's even like a thing that I have a problem with
Mm,
myself right now, is being able to empathize
right.
with a lot of people. And the reason I say that, because, and you know, my missus, she's the one who told me, you know, stop to do something, because I always compare myself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was down and when I was out, this is what I did, right? And or I hold myself to a higher standard, and you know, you suck it up, Buttercup, and the whole 9 yards. And the missus was like, "Well, babe, you got to understand, not everybody is you.
Yeah.
Not every you can't hold people to the same standards that you hold yourself. You know, people are very different, and everyone's different." And she's like, "That's not fair to the other person. Yeah, if it's that makes sense, or that's better
Mm.
for you, you know." And slowly but surely, you know, like anything else, you know, the missus is right, you know. So it's like, all right, cool. So it's like, you got to sit down and sometimes just listen to somebody else just talk. And it's not about them looking for advice, it's let them, I just need an ear to listen, that's all it is.
Yeah, and then again, you say you know you can't empathize, but hey, listen, that's the whole point of empathy, right there. I mean, you literally laid it out right there. You know, like I can think of so many
Yeah.
conversations I've had where like I felt like in my head, like this is pointless. All I'm doing is going, yeah, oh, I'm so sorry that it's like that. Like I'm like, how is this helping? Like if someone was there with me, but again, like you said, what works for you or what's right for you is different for them. Like maybe for them, having someone there being like, "Hey, it's gonna be all right, buddy. It's gonna be okay." Maybe that is what you
Right.
need to hear. I don't know. I suppose it really depends.
Sometimes people just need to, you know, let it out and just have somebody they can just talk to or talk at, I guess, you know?
Yeah. Um.
Yeah, that's,
As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to walk a little bit through sort of your life outside of acting, because I feel like, well, first of all, it's interesting, and secondly, I feel like it does kind of shed an interesting light on your obviously your decision to then get into acting, and then like
mm.
using what you've learned from life and channeling that into your performances. So let's just start with your military career. What would you say were your biggest kind of lessons and takeaways from your time in the military?
It, man, it's a tough one. Jeez, the biggest lessons. Um, the biggest thing I could sit here and say as far as that is, everybody's responsible for themselves. That's something I learned on that aspect. You can try as much as possible to help somebody, but ultimately it's up to them to sit here and want to change or to want to do something. Like, it's ultimately up to you, and that's something I feel very strongly about. Is this is one of the biggest things I learned? It's either you do it or you don't. You put yourself into it or you don't. And it's so interesting to learn that, because it's no longer like, everything's in your hands if you can put it up to that. even the things that go through your hard times. Well, how are you going to get over that hard time, right? How are you going to get over that mistake that you made, or that unfortunate, traumatizing? How are you going to get over it? How are you going to deal with it and move on from there? That's something I learned directly from being in the military, is to be a stronger person as yourself. Just be you, but be a stronger version of you, I guess, is to sit here and best way to sit here and say it, while still, being able to go about your business and go about your day. Like, even when I first came home, I found it so hard to deal with so many people just talking about so many things. Oh, I had my test today, and it was really hard. It was really stressful, and I'm like, oh, is it as stressful as being in a war zone? No, right? All right, that sucks. I don't know what to tell
Yeah,
you, right?
no,
All right,
I
that's terrible.
understand.
Oh, my job at not knocking anybody, but my job at McDonald's or whatever it may be, I had to deal with this rude customer. Oh, where are you getting shot at? No, no. All right, yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, no. I found it so hard just to deal with people on a regular basis, and it's something I had to get through dealing with that. I'm no longer like that now, and I'm like, that sucks. Yeah, like I get it. But uh, being in the military is like so life altering and changing. It makes you responsible for you, is the best way I can sit here and say. You're no longer holding anybody else accountable for your own actions. It's you. You're responsible for you, is the best way I can sit here and say it. You want to go out and achieve something, get out there and do it. You want to sit here, and you may fail, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing you're going to learn. You may fail, and it's all right to fail, but if you don't sit here and get out there and put yourself into that situation, you're never going to ever know. You know what I mean? Like that's the best way I can sit here and say you learn to be the strongest version of you, where you can fall on your ass and get back up again. It's kind of awesome, actually. I like that anyways. It's all for me.
Thanks for sharing, man. You were also a police officer, is that correct? Sometime?
I was, yes. I was a police officer, yes. And what's funny about that is, like, when I joined, uh I did it because I wanted to help people, right? And it was something that meant a lot to me. I wanted to help people and save people. Save people. Here I am. The hero complex, right? And I
No, I
wanted to
think
go out
that's
there
a
and help as
noble
many people as I
pursuit.
can.
I don't think there's
you
anything wrong
know,
with wanting to be a hero. Like, do you know, that's a noble
and
thing, trying to help people.
yeah, it is. I wanted to help as many people as possible. And slowly but surely, I realized, it wasn't that. That's not what that was. And I
Yeah.
quickly fell out of love with it. And I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. I'm like, this is not what I'm about. This is not what I stand for. Like,
Because of like bureaucratic bullshit, or just things you
it.
saw maybe you
Yeah,
didn't agree with morally, maybe,
there's
or
well, first things first. I was going to tell you, there's a lot of things I saw that I didn't agree with morally. The
mm.
one thing that always sticks out in my head,
Can I
as a
ask
new
as well?
police officer.
Well, whereabouts were you a police officer? Because fun fact, I've had a former police officer on the show from New York, funnily enough.
Well,
But yeah,
it's the NYPD,
okay,
so
yeah.
it's
So
one of the biggest names in police, right? And there's a couple of things. Like, the one incident that always sticks out to me is we got a call one time of, like, these group of kids inside of a building of a Home Depot parking lot, and it was just the kids playing football, right? That's all it was. The store was closed. There was no cars in the parking lot, whatever it may be. They're just having fun tossing around a football. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock at night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Okay, cool, I get it. Are they really supposed to be there? No, the store's closed. You're not supposed to be there. You know, did they hop a fence? No, they didn't. The gate's wide open. And here comes, like, a bunch of other officers, and they just start taking their stuff and rifling through it. And I'm just like, oh, hey, hold on a second. You're not really allowed to do that. Are you stopping them? Are they under arrest? Or are you writing them a citation? Well, what are you doing? Like, that's kind of against their amendment. You're forcing them to give them, give you their property, and you can just open it willingly. I'm like, that's not cool, man. That's not cool at all. Like, what are you doing? And then it brings in the question, well, why are you even here bothering them? Because I remember, like, it's like 4 or 5 cars pulled up, and it's just a bunch of kids playing football in a Home Depot parking lot. Are they breaking things? No. Are they being rowdy and loud? No. They're playing a game of football. Well, would you rather them sit here and oh, that's my alarm. I'm sorry. Would you rather them sit here and, like, be dealing drugs or selling drugs or taking drugs,
Right.
or would you rather just be playing football in a Home Depot parking lot? Like, I don't understand that concept. Like, here's a group of kids doing absolutely nothing wrong except being, in a parking lot after hours, uh, but for all intents and purposes, are they bothering anybody? No. But here you are busting their balls because you got a call to go through there, and then now you're rifling through. That's not open take. It's not open season to rifle through their stuff, to go through their things. You have any reason to do that? No. And you see, it happens more often than you think, where you can sit here and get somebody on these question traps. And like, I can even do it now. I could still do it. You talk to somebody, and it's like leading somebody down a line of questioning where you
Right.
want them to get or you want an answer from them, but you want them to say an unwilling, like, well, what were you doing? Why are you here? Why is this? Why is that? Who brought you here? Well, how long have you been here for? And it's a very kind of like tricky way of doing things. And I'm just like, I like to take people at their word for the most part. And I'm like, that's kind of doesn't sit right with me a lot of times. And you see, it happens more often than you think. Getting somebody to say something that they didn't actually mean, or getting somebody to do something they didn't actually do, or say, or mean to do. It's so easy, and they teach you how to do it. That's the craziest thing in the world. They actually teach you how to do all this. And it's like, I really didn't like that too much. And I did it for like 7 years.
When,
And
when
I'm
did
just like,
you
you
when
know
did you
what?
do it? Like, what years were you a cop?
I want to say like 2016, 2014. No, it was 2014. That's what it was. No, never mind. It was 2014. And then I officially got onto the streets like 2015, 2016, like that, around
Hmm.
there. So I did it for like 7 years, and I'm just like, I've kind of have enough of this, because it starts changing you as a person, and you start questioning everybody's motives, and the only friends that you have are cops, and you're just like, it's very taxing and
Actually,
drawing
that's
on you
that's a
as a
point.
person.
I didn't ask the other gentleman that I had that was a police officer. Probably should have asked him this too. Like, how did people who weren't cops but were like did know you? Did they change their behavior towards you, or like how were
Oh
they towards
yeah.
you?
Oh yes. 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 Then it was, you have your friends, who are, of the unsavory type, the friends you've known for like forever and a day,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, well, well, hold on, Officer so and so is here now, and I'm just like, bro, I'm not even working right now to begin with. Just chill out with that. And then you start
Sure,
getting
but
paranoid too, because
okay, I gotta ask
good.
though, like the whole off-duty cop thing. Like, you still, if you see like a crime, like you still have to do
Yes,
something,
you
don't
do.
you?
Yes, you do.
Right. But
Yes,
I
you do.
get it. If
If
you're like
you're,
with your buddies and like maybe he got like a
well,
keg that he shouldn't have had or something, and you're like, I didn't see that.
you,
I mean, I don't know.
you're like, I mean, your little things. You're like, maybe I shouldn't be here.
Yeah,
Like, this
right.
looks like it's gonna get out of control. Let me not be here. But like your overly like egregious things. You're like, no, I have to actually do something about this. So it's like, at that point you become even more ultra aware of your, excuse me, of your surroundings, of your situations. Like, do I want to be in this situation? Do I not want to be in this situation? Do I want to associate myself with these type of people? that's a whole other thing to sit here and get involved with. And you're just like, it makes you hyper aware of everyone and everything. And you're like, well, this guy's got his hands in his pockets. All right, well, he could just have his hands in his pockets, or he could have something in his pockets. You don't know, you know?
He's either rude or he's
And
a criminal.
yeah, exactly. It's either like, what is he doing, you know, or this guy's got his hood on. And you're like, oh, all right, cool. Well, he has his hood on. Or he has his hood on and it's 90 degrees outside. You start thinking about all these different things, and it's like, all right, cool. It just makes you really hyper aware of everybody, and then you start questioning everybody's motives, and that's where you're like, I don't know, bro.
what's
That's
that?
that's a little difficult.
What's the like craziest thing you ever saw as a cop?
I don't know, man. There's a few things. There's a few things. I think the crazy. Wow. Jeez, I don't know, man. That's a tough one, dude. Because I was out during the riots for like Eric Gardner and Freddie Gray and everything else like that. So I did that. Um, I was at a parade and somebody's hand got cut off.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was one. There was one. There was a fire, and we had to do something about the fire. There was that one. There was people getting into car accidents, fleeing from scenes, and like you're flying down, chasing these people down. Sometimes, uh, yeah, it's there's a lot. The most standout one, it was like it's when I first started. Uh, a woman had passed away in our own home, and you get a call, and you always know it's going to be like something because people are like, oh well, there's a really bad smell coming from this particular apartment,
Oh, yeah.
and you're like, oh, okay, and it smells like rotting fruit, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, all right, you instinctively know, like, because again, from the military, you know, you've been around a few things, and you're like, all right, and this woman was there, and she had passed out, and the way she had passed out was half her body was on her bed and then half her body was on the floor,
Jeez.
and all the blood, because now she's, you know, her heart, you know, and her head are on the floor and everything else like that, so she's like kind of like half on the bed, half on the floor. All the blood had, you know, pooled around her head and in her face and her body,
Yeah.
and she had turned purple.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, okay. And, you know, you wait for the medical examiner and the EMTs. They do what they do because, you know, you're not allowed to touch the body because it could be potentially a crime scene,
Mhm.
unless like it's somebody like who's actively dying, or you know, where you have to jump in and save somebody. But yeah, that was one thing. Another thing is like I was coming back from doing something, and there's a call of like a dead body in the street, and I go to the person who called. I'm like, hey, did you call? Like, yeah, officer, I got to tell you something. There's a dead body in the street. And I'm like, no. There's no dead body in the street. Get out of here. You know, there's nobody around. There's nobody screaming. You didn't hear anything. And you walk over. You're like, oh, shit, there really is a dead body like in the middle of the damn road. Like, okay. All right. Well, we got to get the ball rolling now. Like, I guess we got to sit here and do this and do that and do everything else that we have to do. It gets absolutely insane and absolutely crazy. I've had people cry for help. I've had people call for help. I have people who didn't want help. Or my personal favorite is the person. Sometimes people will call the police, and then you'd have to arrest the person who called
Yeah.
because they're, you know, you determine through your own investigation that they're at fault. They're like, well, I called you, so how am I at fault? That's not how that works.
Do
That's
you have to
not how
deal?
that works at all, buddy.
Do you have to deal with any Karens where they just called you like, oh yeah, the
Oh
store.
yeah.
Come on, best
Oh,
Karen stories. Let's go.
I the best one. Yeah, the best Karen story actually comes from a guy. I pulled
What's a
him
male
over
Karen?
because yeah, it was a male Karen. All right. The best story was
Calvin.
from a guy, Calvin. Yeah, really right.
Calvin story.
You know, don't spread that one around, Calvin. Right. This guy, I think, if I remember, like I pulled him over for like a red light or something like that. It was something, you know, benign, and And then, you go up to the license, registration, proof of insurance, please and thank you. You try and be polite as much as humanly possible, as much as the situation allows for it.
Mm.
And the guy's like, well, why are you pulling up? I'm like, I'll tell you as soon as you produce the documentation I've requested. I'm more than willing to explain to you. And the guy's like, well, officer, this is how you know they're going to be an officer. Would you sit here and say that you get paid from the city, right? And I'm like, well,
Here we
yeah,
go.
I do get paid from the city. And now I'm a hardworking individual, and I pay my taxes. And I'm like, okay, very well. Well, my taxes go to the city? I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So would you say that my taxes pay your salary, and by extension, would you sit here and say I'm kind of your boss? And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. No, I'm like, it's like, give me the documentation now. Now, you're kind of being a dick to me. So
Yeah.
now I'm gonna be a dick to you, right? I'm
It's a
like,
shame,
no,
shame you
just
can't really
give me the stuff
just
now.
arrest someone for being a dick, can you? But,
No, you can't. You can't. But again, this goes back to you could work around it. You can
yeah.
you can really ruin someone's day if you wanted to, right? And I'm just like, well, no, just dude, give me your license, registration, proof of insurance. All right, stop your nonsense. All right, finally gives it up, man. And he's like, well, this is where like the whole sovereign citizen comes in. There's a thing like in the States called being a sovereign citizen. Well, we have the free right to travel, and we have the free right to roam between states and so on and so forth, yada yada, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, you do. But driving is a privilege, and you have to be licensed to drive. You can free roam however you want, whether it be on bike or on foot or however you want to go. But driving is a privilege, and that privilege can be revoked at any point in time. So it's a very nice try. I've been to in court. In court, people have tried to fight me in court, like
What?
physically altercations, and I'm just like, it's not gonna end well for you, buddy. Like, please don't do that.
Is this just people you personally booked, or?
Yeah, I've either given a ticket to, or I've arrested some, like, people try and fight you, and you're just like, But then again, like, naturally I'm a very big guy, and I'm like, dude, that's really not gonna, benefit you. But then again, like, you also get like a lot of kids who are like short and scrawny and everything else like that, and they put on the shield and they put on the uniform, and all of a sudden now they can fight, now they can shoot, now they're the Incredible Hulk or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm like, the uniform, me personally, this doesn't go for everybody. The uniform kind of brings out something in you. I don't know. It kind of makes you like a little bit of a dick sometimes. It doesn't apply to everybody, of course, but I feel like people do join for the very wrong reasons. And then you put that uniform on, and it's like, dude, like, you're just like an asshole, bro. like chill the fuck out. Were you always this way, or did the uniform make you that way? Like, I don't know. You and especially like throughout the years, you just become so jaded to like so many different things. You're like, I don't know, bro.
I watched I bet this was an old 70s movie, but Serpico, I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, Al Pacino movie.
That's actually, yeah, Serpico. That's actually based on a very true story, too.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing in the world. That was a real deal kind of thing.
I wondered, like, I know it's a long time ago, but with what you mentioned earlier about how you see certain things in the job that maybe are not all there, like, would you say modern policing is better or worse when you use that kind of as an example of like a measurement of how things used to be?
I don't know. That's you, because it does happen. It does happen. Where you're put into like these situations, and it's like, these are your make or break situations.
Right.
Does it make you a better person? I don't know. I guess you find out who you are, I guess, is the best way to explain it. or you find out who you are or where your morals draw wherever from.
Right.
I guess it's the best way to say it. You find out, you know, what you're really about. I guess that's the best. I don't know, man. That's a very tricky way of
I
saying it
know it's a
because
heavy
everybody's
question.
different. It's a heavy question. You find out the real you, I guess. You know, because it's so easy to fall down like a rabbit hole with something like, well, I let this slide, so I could let this slide, or I did this, so I could do it again, or I could do this. It's I don't. That's so man. That's a tough one, dude. Like,
Well, let's go
good on
from
you for that one.
let's go for a more fun one. There's a lot of shows in the States, like police. We've got a lot of them as well, like police dash cam style shows where you expose different types of criminals, and it can be a lot of fun. I'm wondering, with your experiences as a police officer, stupidest like as in the stupidest criminal you came across. You must have some stories where you just like, come
Oh,
on, buddy.
I have one where it was I was they call it a post. You're at a post. You're at a specific area you're not supposed to leave, or this you're not supposed to leave this area or the surrounding area. So they call it a post. And I'm in the car, and this woman comes up and she just knocks on the window. She's like, "Excuse me, officer, can I talk to you for a second?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, what's up? Talk, sure, talk to me." Um, she goes, "Well, there was a guy, and I went to go buy drugs, and I bought the drugs. I gave him the money, and he gave me, the bag that I thought was supposed to be, crack, and it wasn't. It was a bunch of Tic Tacs, and I'm just like, okay, cool." She's like, and I just wanted to make you aware of it, and I wanted to know if there's something you could do about it. And I'm like, let me get this straight. You're coming to the police. She goes, yes. And I'm like, you went to purchase illegal drugs. She's like, yes. And your drug dealer ripped you off, right? And she goes, can I just leave? I'm like, yeah, you can just leave. Right? You can just go. And I'm just like that. The clock, the gears weren't ticking in your head, like, hey, I went to go buy drugs and I got ripped off. Now, as a person, you broke that bond between dealer and seller, right? Okay, cool. You broke that bond. All right. I get that concept. As a cop, you're coming to, report your illegal activities on somebody else's illegal activities. And I'm just like, did that sit like did you run that conversation up through your head? Right? If not, rewind this and talk to me later, okay? She's like, can I just leave? Like, yeah, you can go if you like. It's all right, go. I'm not gonna help you with your illegal drug situation. I guess you're asked out of however money you stole. The other one was a guy came up to me and he's like, officer, I wanna bring to your attention something. I'm like, all right, what's up? He's like, the bouncer threw me out of the club. I'm like, okay. He goes, yeah, he took my $5, I guess was the entrance fee, and he threw me out and said I can't come in. And I'm like, well, and I tried to go get my money back. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, where's the club? Well, you know the barber shop over there? Yeah, no, I know that. Well, they run an illegal nightclub down there. And I'm just like, all right, so now I'm not gonna help you get your money back, but you just sat here and like told me like somebody's running an
But by the
illegal
way, were you
nightclub
just
at a
sitting there thinking
barber
like,
shop.
were you just like, oh, more work? He's just,
It,
that's X amount of
not
paperwork
even
now.
it's not even that it's like X amount of paperwork. It's just like, do you like think about what you're saying first before you come up to a cop that your illegal nightclub that you're at or the illegal drugs you're trying to purchase and you're trying to like see if the cops can help you with your illegal situation? And I'm like, it's not, no, bro, no, that's not how that goes.
Jesus, people, man.
I've had a lot of funny people. I've had a lot of ones, man. A woman, I pulled over a woman one time, and a lot of funny stories. And she was like speeding. I pulled over, and I'm like, ma'am, is there any particular reason that you're driving above the speed limit? And She's like, oh, da 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 da, whatever. And her friend's like sitting in the corner. She's like, officer, stop for a second, please. I gotta sit here and I'm gonna be very honest with you. All right, we just had like these. What was it like? Juice smoothies. That's what it was, and it is running right through her, and she's got to take like the biggest shit music like possible, and her stomach's hurting, and I'm just like, all right, you made me you embarrassed yourself. You made me laugh, and I'm like, all right, I'll see you later. Like, have at it, go for it. I'll talk to you later. You know what it is? Like, not every guy's a dick. It's if you can make me laugh, I'll see you later. Like, I'll talk to you later. Provided it's not
You heard it right
overly
there, man,
egregious,
guys. If you want to get off crime, just make the cop laugh.
Yeah, as long as it's not like overly egregious, then you'll be all right. That was the best way to say it.
Reach in the dad jokes column, no problem.
Dad jokes, exactly.
All right, man. A couple of final questions for you. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
You can be the best you that you could be. That's it. It's and only you. Be the best you that you could be is the best life lesson I ever learned. It's, how are you going to move on from this situation? How are you going to sit here and deal with this situation? Well, what are you going to do to achieve your goal? And keep in mind that everything has an answer at that exact moment in time. Not everything's going to have an answer at that moment in time. You're going to find out that answer along the way. But it's literally be the best you that you could be, and don't hold anybody else to your standards, because you're kind of just going to fail and you're going to be disappointed.
And what's the best advice you've ever received?
If you want something, go after it. Don't ever be afraid to ask. That's the best. I asked my teacher just recently because the acting teachers that I have are from the shows I want to be on.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
I recently asked I asked my teacher recently, and I was like, "Hey, I hope I'm not crossing any boundaries, any lines, or whatever it may be. But if I can, do you mind introducing me to the casting director, or at least introducing me to your agency, your agent? I was like, I hope I didn't cross any kind of lines, or whatever it may be." And the one thing he sat here and said was, he's like, first things first, don't ever be afraid to ask for what you want, because no one's gonna give it to you. You gotta ask. You gotta put yourself out there and ask. You know what I mean?
That's the truth.
It's don't be afraid to ask. That's really what it is. You just don't be afraid to ask.
As we draw things to a close today, do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Put yourself out there. That's it's. I have a couple projects. I've done a few audiobooks. And a few the audiobooks, right? Oh man, I have a story about an audiobook right quick. There was a book I did. It was for a religious text, and it was like if I remember correctly, it was like the Queen of the Coast and her evil minions. And the guy was a very religious person, and I had to sit here, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't bother me, but what did bother me was that I had to say, like, in the name of Jesus over 200 times. And I'm just like, oh man, like it was just pulling teeth, because it was in various ways in different lines of in the name of Jesus. And it was every evil arrow fired back at me, I fired back at you. In the name of Jesus. Every evil intention fired at me, I fired directly back at you. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus.
And it was over 200 times. And again, it's not knocking anybody. Believe whatever you want to believe. That's all fine and dandy. But
so long as it
was just,
in the name of Jesus.
As long as you're there, we're like, in the name of Jesus. Right? It was, and that's exactly how I said it too. Like, in the name of Jesus. Right? It was over and over and over.
In the name of Jesus.
And I think after that book, I drew the line at religious texts. So I was like, all right, I'm done, man. But the best advice I could give is just put yourself out there, man. Just put yourself out there. Obviously, take the time, the prep time. Take the classes. Take acting classes, man. Take acting classes. God help you take the acting classes. Uh, because even you could be the best actor in the world, and even then, they still talk to coaches and they still talk to actors and classes. Even LeBron James still practices. Get out there, take the acting classes, and just put yourself out there. That's the best advice I can ever give anybody. Just take the classes and put yourself out there. You may be naturally talented and good at something. Yeah, that's cool. But you still got to practice, bro. You know what I mean? You still got to practice. You still got to try.
And make sure
Make
sure you do it all in the name of Jesus.
As long as it's in the name of Jesus.
In the name of
exactly.
Jesus. I'm going to be stuck on that for the next week now. In the name of Jesus. by like the 50th time in, I'd just be like having fun with it, like, in the name of Jesus. I just
exactly. You start saying it all sorts of weird ways. Like, in the name of Jesus. Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a tough one to get through. I made it through it, but it was a tough one to get through.
I could just sit here now and just say that for the next half an hour. In the name of Jesus. Like, I don't know why. It's like, it sounds like something you'd hear in like a corny 80s action movie. Like, I'm gonna kick your ass in the name of Jesus.
That's the catchphrase, right? In the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus. All right.
All right, brother, man.
All right. Let's have some decorum here.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for appearing on the show. It's been a blast. You're always welcome.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Thank you.
It's been fun. It's been fun. Yeah.
That's what I always want it to be, man. Fun. And thank you so much for making it fun. And everybody, make sure you go check out Johnathan online. He's an amazing voice actor. Really, really just incredible at his craft. Real inspiration. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
You are too kind. You were too kind.
Oh, I mean it,
Thank
man.
you so
I mean
much.
it.
I appreciate you.
I see what you're doing. In the name of Jesus. It's brilliant. It's honestly. Keep it up. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, make sure to let me know in the name of Jesus. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, we end the way we started, laughing. I think that's a testament to today's show. It's been a blast.
You have to, man. It's it really is. I appreciate you, brother, man. Thank you so much for having me again. All right.
It's been an honor as always. And thank you everybody to listening to the Christian Reeve podcast. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.